4 years. It's been 4 years since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and what started as a lightning-fast assault has morphed into a brutal, grinding war of attrition. The strategies have changed, the front lines have shifted, but one thing hasn't: Ukraine's fight for survival. So let's break down exactly how we got to this point.
We're going to start with this number because, honestly, it frames everything else we're about to talk about. 20%. After 4 devastating years of war, that's the portion of Ukrainian territory that Russia still occupies. It's just a stark reminder of the scale and the stakes of this whole conflict.
So, to really get what's happening now, we've got to rewind to the very beginning. The initial Russian plan was all about shock and awe, a rapid blitzkrieg designed to completely overwhelm Ukraine and take the capital Kyiv in just a matter of days.
And the speed of it all was just incredible. The invasion kicked off at 4 in the morning with attacks from the air and on the ground. And get this, in just 10 days, Russian forces were already on the edge of Kyiv. They were so close that you could hear artillery fire less than 20 kilometers from the presidential office.
You know, at the time, pretty much everyone around the world was thinking the same thing. The sheer size and power of the Russian military just seemed unstoppable. A quick Russian victory didn't just seem likely, it felt absolutely inevitable. But it turns out Moscow had made one huge miscalculation. They completely underestimated the will of the Ukrainian people to resist.
And this right here is where the whole story just completely flips on its head. What everyone expected to be a quick collapse, while it turned into a story of fierce, defiant, and incredibly successful defense.
By early April, Ukrainian forces had done what seemed impossible. They'd pushed the entire Russian army out of the Kyiv region. And as they took back their land, the world started to see the horrific evidence of atrocities in places like Bucha. This victory was followed by a massive counteroffensive in September that took back thousands of square kilometers, and it all led up to the liberation of Kherson in November after 8 long months of occupation.
But here's the thing, right? Winning that first round created a totally new kind of problem. The blitzkrieg had failed, so Russia's strategy changed. Ukraine was now facing an enemy that was digging in for the long haul, which posed a really tough new question for its military.
And that brings us to the next major phase of this war. Russia basically abandoned its plan for a quick takeover. Instead, it pivoted to a slow, grinding war of attrition, a strategy designed to simply exhaust Ukraine's military and break its will to fight.
And if you want a textbook example of this new phase, look no further than the siege of Bakhmut. This city became the absolute focal point of the entire war, a literal meat grinder where both sides just poured in unbelievable amounts of resources to gain, sometimes, just a few feet of ground.
Just think about that for a second. 10 months. A single battle for one city raged for 10 relentless months. This wasn't about clever maneuvers anymore. It was just a brutal, head-on clash, a fight for every single building and every single street.
And the cost, it was just staggering. Now, official numbers are hard to get, but estimates suggest Russia suffered over 60,000 casualties. That's killed and wounded, just in the fight for Bakhmut. It's a number that's almost hard to wrap your head around, and it really shows you the brutality of this new strategy.
But here's what was happening almost behind the scenes. While the whole world was watching Bakhmut, Russia was using that time to prepare for whatever Ukraine would throw at them next. They built these huge, complex defensive lines and laid just massive, dense minefields all across the front. So this new reality, a static, heavily fortified front line, it forced another big change. A direct assault was now incredibly costly, so both sides had to get creative. They had to innovate and find new ways to try and get an edge.
And you can really see the split in strategy here. Russia doubled down on its slow, grinding advance and backed it up with missile strikes on civilian infrastructure. Ukraine, on the other hand, turned to asymmetric warfare. The thinking was, if we can't punch through the front, we'll go around it, hitting high-value targets deep behind enemy lines.
And this is a perfect illustration of that new approach. Ukraine launched these daring raids across the border, even capturing the Russian town of Sudzha for a while. They also really ramped up long-range drone strikes on Russian oil facilities. The goal here was twofold. First, mess with the fuel supply for the Russian army. And second, hit the Kremlin's export income, the money that funds the war.
But here's the harsh reality. Even with all of Ukraine's clever, innovative tactics, Russia's slow, grinding offensive just kept inching forward. They managed to capture an additional 4,831 square kilometers of Ukrainian land throughout 2025, mostly in the south.
Because behind all these maps and strategies and shifting front lines, there is a devastating human cost. After 4 years, the toll this war has taken it's unimaginable, both for the soldiers fighting and for the civilians who are caught right in the middle of it all.
And this to give you a sense of what this feels like for ordinary people. By early 2026, because of Russia's attacks on infrastructure, power outages in cities like Kyiv weren't a matter of hours anymore. They were lasting for days at a time, shutting down public transport and leaving people without heat in the middle of winter.
Okay, so a really important note before we go on. The numbers you're about to see, they're not official. Neither Russia nor Ukraine has released official casualty figures. What we have are estimates from third-party groups, like the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
According to those estimates, 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in 4 years of war. An entire generation of defenders lost.
For Russia, the estimated number of soldiers killed is even higher, 275,000. The scale of the human loss on both sides is it's almost impossible to comprehend. And so we kind of end where we began. 20% of Ukraine is still under occupation, hundreds of thousands of people are dead, and after 4 years of a war that has constantly changed and evolved, the fighting continues every single day. So the only real question left is, what will a 5th year bring?